Hello and welcome to another episode of Legends of FPV here with GetFPV. My name is Andy Graber. Thank you for joining us tonight, everyone on the live stream. And tonight we have a very special guest, one who I am sure we are going to learn something from. You may have guessed who that tagline's from. And we are joined by Joshua Bardwell of the very famous Mr. Bardwell, Joshua Bardwell's YouTube channel. And without further ado, I'm going to bring him on.
What's up?
Good evening. Hey, Joshua.
How you doing, Andy?
Good. Thanks for joining us. Looks like we got a good crew already following us here live. Thank you for everyone joining us tonight. We are going to sit down with Joshua, pick his brain a little bit about FPV, hear a little bit about maybe how you got started in this hobby and a little bit of your journey of where we are today, and then hopefully maybe some insights of the future too. I'd love just to get to know you better and get the fans here to get a chance to say hi too.
I feel like we should have some, a glass of wine or something.
Yeah, maybe I'll add it to the show. We'll sit down and get real relaxed. We got a lot of people already in the chat. I'm starting to scan through here. Hey, Double A, Huff, Frog, awesome.
Matt Pouchet,
Skadoosh,
Matt Pouchwat. Oh my God, I've been mentally saying his name wrong for so long. Matt. The guy I am singly most afraid will quit his day job and go YouTube full time. His YouTube videos have incredible production. It's a good thing he doesn't have time to make very many of them, or I'd be in trouble.
Well, you do great, Joshua. I think we all agree here too. Why don't we get started with a little bit at the beginning, and then I have a few things planned. We'll go throughout the show here, and we'll chime in. If any of you has a question on the live stream, put it in there in the chat. We'll try to get to it as best we can. Thanks for joining us in this conversation. So, Josh, how did you get started in FPV? When was that, and what did that look like for you?
I mean, when was it? It's around the 2014, 2015 timeframe. I got started in RC when I was like 15. My uncle gave me an airplane he had built and never flew. I flew it for a couple weeks, crashed it, never thought of it again.
Was that like a wood balsa one at that time then or something?
Okay. Yeah, with a big AM radio antenna. It was great, but I got back into RC when a friend of mine bought a Phantom. I thought it was the coolest thing, getting to fly it. I'd never flown a multi-rotor before. Got into RC with, watching flight test and all that stuff. And, it was one little bit at a time.
Awesome. So did you start with fixed wing or right to multi-rotors then?
I started with fixed wing. So he had the Phantom, and I thought, my wife was like, oh, hey, can you build one of those? And I was like, no, don't be ridiculous. It's far too complicated. It's all proprietary. I'm sure you couldn't build one. Little did I know, multi-wii did exist at the time. People were, doing it, but I didn't know. But I thought, this RC flight thing is pretty fun. I remember that airplane from my uncle fondly. And I got a Bixler. A little foam Bixler plane, built it up, got a Turnigy controller, and was driving down to the soccer field near my house to fly the plane for a while. I started
line of sight at the time.
Yes. Okay. So I did do some FPV. I had an FPV plane for a while, but I saw like Sharpoo was doing awesome things with FPV and multi-rotors, and the flight test guys were doing multi-rotor stuff with David Windestall, and the number one thing that drove me to build a multi-rotor was the desire to be able to fly like around my house because you can't fly a plane at my house, it's too tight. But I thought, wouldn't it be nice to be able to step out of your front yard and fly? And little did I know that's like all I would do for the next 7 years.
Right. So what were you doing at the time? FPV wasn't your full-time thing at that point. What were you doing? Was that become your hobby for a while? And how did that transition work for you?
Yeah, my job was I did Wi-Fi related install consulting, troubleshooting. So I worked out of my home though, because a lot of the work was travel related or remote. So we would go to a customer's site, we would troubleshoot their wireless network or do a site survey. We'd come back home with the data and write a report. So there was no my whole career working for that company, I never had an office. They're based out of California, and I just was in Atlanta, and then I was in Knoxville. So I had a lot of spare time when I wasn't working, as you know, as everybody in the world learned pretty much these last couple of years. When you work from home, you have a lot more spare time.
Mm.
So I would, I worked on quads, and I eventually started making videos, and but that was all in my spare time for several years.
So when was it that you started doing YouTube videos, and what was that content like? For those of us
Um,
that haven't gone back to the beginning of your timeline.
yeah. So my first YouTube content, I was working on black box. I was studying black box logs and trying to figure out how to interpret black box logs and
Okay.
what they meant about what the quadcopter was doing. And one of the things I did in my career was to be an instructor. So I would develop and teach courses about various topics. And so a way to sort of put information together in my mind was to write a course about it, write an outline, and create material to sort of teach it. And I made a PowerPoint slide deck about interpreting black box logs and what they mean, and I put it up on RC groups, and very few people downloaded it. And I thought, well, that's no good. So I started making YouTube videos about black box analysis, just because I wanted to understand the information better by translating it for other people.
Yep.
Um,
What was the hardware like that you were analyzing at the time? Was that NAS boards or?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm sure. I mean, it'd be hard to remember the exact time frame, but I'm sure it was NAS 32.
Hmm.
My first flight controller was multi-wii, but I quickly moved to NAS 32 with Clean Flight, and then eventually, I remember when the F3 boards came out, and it was like, oh, big deal to have an F3. Um, but yeah, that's the stuff we were working with.
Awesome. So when was the transition for you from doing that on the side to, I know you're full time, this is my job. That's kind of your tagline now, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think it was around early 2018. In fact, I think it was right around the end of 2017, if my memory's correct. I looked at sometime in the middle of 2017. I looked at the finances, and I realized that if I wanted to, I could. I wouldn't immediately be homeless if I quit my job. And I debated continue. I mean, I was still doing it all in my spare time, but of course, I debated keeping that up rather than giving up my day job. But I really wanted the ability to sort of commit, and I thought that if you have the opportunity to do something like that you enjoy, and you can support yourself and support your family, then you probably ought to go for it.
Awesome. That's a really cool story to hear that you're able to transition
Yeah.
that way. And then I mean, how's it been going? You'd say you're
So,
happy with that choice?
yeah. Oh, yeah. For sure. For sure. I mean, so far so good. But I'm enjoying it, and so far I still am not homeless. So I'll keep it up as long as it keeps going.
Awesome. Which part of like what you do to create the content that you have on your channel and all the other ways that you connect with people, which part do you feel like you enjoy the most? Is there the editing, the creation of the content, the learning part, or like how would you describe your favorite part?
I probably enjoy making the content the most. I val the answering questions is like practically just a compulsion. like um, it's but I enjoy making the content. I like making and editing videos, and I like putting stuff out there that I feel is good quality content that helps people. There's a lot more payoff in making a video, because if you make a video and 10,000, 20,000 people watch it, then you've helped a lot of people. But individual, like one-on-one, you can help one person a lot, but it doesn't feel as like you're contributing as much. You're contributing a lot to that one person, and it is
Mhm.
valuable. But I feel like I get a lot more juice out of like putting out, like I go, oh, this is a good video. This is like a really good product review that people are gonna get a lot of value from. I like that a lot.
Awesome. So I know with content, oftentimes as the creator, and I've been in positions like that before where you're like, this is going to be the best video ever. You launch
Yeah,
it and then nobody seems to care. And then on the flip side, you launch a video where you say, I hardly spent any time. I'm going to throw this up. And all of a sudden, for some reason, that connects with a lot of people and you get a lot of, do you have anything like that was similar to you?
We, I mean, I think the closest thing to that is that I'll do like a technical video that I'm really excited to do, and it's like so technical that no one cares. Like five people are like, "Oh wow, that's really good," but nobody watches it. And then on the flip side, like product reviews, people just eat them up, and there's so many products that I could make content about that I just don't care about. Like I know the SEO would be good, and I'm just like, oh, I don't want to, I don't care, I don't want to do that. Um, so mostly I don't. Sometimes I do, but it's nice when those two things line up. When there's a product that I'm excited about and I can put the video out, and then people like it gets a lot of engagement. It's nice.
Yeah, I can imagine. I get that feeling often when you put a large chunk of your life into designing a new product,
Mm,
finally get to launch it, and then when it actually
mm,
launches, like and people are excited about it, that day
mm-hmm.
of where you're just seeing traffic and sales, it feels really neat to be able to finally share something that you designed. I'm sure that's similar to like a
Yeah.
video that you've created.
I mean, the good news is that I put out about 4, maybe 5 videos a week. So if one of them is a dud, I like, okay, well, I'm just on to the next one, right? And I also rely a lot on the support of people on my Patreon. You know,
Yeah, I
it's
see all people in
nice.
the chat here. They're saying they're all patrons and or Patreons, and that's
Yeah.
really cool.
I rely on that a lot because even if the YouTube analytics are down, like if I make videos that those 2 or 3 thousand people love and they're willing to join my Patreon, then I can afford to be a little bit, I could care a little bit less about pleasing the YouTube algorithm, which you
Mm.
see a lot of YouTube content creators. They fall into this mode where they're constantly trying to chase the analytics, and
Hmm.
it ends up in some ways kind of compromising the kind of content you make. I mean, kudos to the ones who are able to please the algorithm and make great content, but it's very, very difficult to do. So it's nice to be able to kind of ignore the algorithm a little bit.
Yeah. So I got a screen share here. I'm going to put up with everybody. There's a few older photos I found of you on the internet
All
that
right.
I'd like to share and maybe get a little background of what we're looking
All
at
right.
here. Does that sound good to you?
All right. Let's do it.
All right. Here's the first one.
Yes. That's me at Burning Man in probably 2007, I think, sometime between '06 and '09. Yeah.
Okay. So what
Really went
was
to Burning
the?
Man.
I mean, you're not really too close to where they do Burning Man. That was something that
No,
you decided to go travel out and attend, or were you just in the area, or what happened?
no. We that was a huge commitment. A lot of packing, a lot of travel. Yeah, no. It's a trek. The people who live like in California, the West Coast. I mean, they can just do a 10 or 12 hour drive and be on the playa. But coming from the East Coast, it's either a plane flight, in which case, how do you get all your gear over there? It's very difficult to get all your gear into a check bag, tents and so forth, or it's like a 50-hour drive. So it's a big commitment to come from the
Yeah,
East
it sounds
Coast.
like it. Did you go with a group of people then, or solo, or how'd that work?
Yeah, I went. Well, I went with my partner. It was actually her idea, and we stayed with a theme camp. So we thought at least for the first year probably be good to stay with people who knew what they were doing and had a experience doing it.
I've never been. It looks like a pretty incredible event, though. A lot of people and a lot going on. What's a theme? You said a theme
A
tent?
theme camp.
What was it?
It's a theme
A camp?
camp is just a larger camp of people that sort of stake out a spot on the playa, and it might be 10 or 20 or 30 or maybe more people, but you can kind of join up with them and stay with them, and they'll provide some infrastructure. Like for example, they might provide a great big shade structure. They might provide meal. Some of them have meal plans. There's various benefits there.
Okay. This is another one.
Yeah,
Seems like around the same time. Is that from the same area, or what
that
was this taken from?
that's from the same photo shoot. I wasn't on the playa then, but I took that picture the same time I had cut my hair for the mohawk. I
Yeah, I
wanted
mean, I
that.
think the hair definitely sticks out because most
Yeah.
everyone probably knows you since you've looked like you do now, which
Uh-huh.
this is quite a different look. So you had a mohawk rocking that for a while, or what was
No, I had the mohawk just for the playa. I mean, I had longer hair. It wasn't long hair, but I was going to cut it short for the playa because the dust is really hard on your hair. So I was like, well, I'm gonna cut my hair short. That was the first time I cut my hair short, actually, and so I was like, well, I may as well do a mohawk. I wanted that shirt to be similar to there's an obscure poster from the Taxi Driver movie, and I wanted that shirt
it?
to look like that. Zorro did that for me. They did a pretty good job.
Very cool. How about this one? You know this guy?
I don't.
Yeah, me
Who's
neither. But
this?
he came up. He apparently is another Joshua Bardwell, so that's your doppelganger. So I thought I'd include him. Just if
Yeah.
you did know him, I was going to be very surprised.
No, I don't know him. I don't know him. I always hear Pavel Spikowski is my Polish doppelganger.
Okay. How about this one?
Well, that's those are shots from the Flow State movie, of course. James Christensen came and interviewed me at my house, and we did a big long interview for the FPV documentary.
Yeah, that I've heard about that documentary a little bit from you as well. Can you give people a little taste of what that is, and if they haven't heard about it, what it's about?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is to create a film that like I watched a We all watch documentaries. A lot of us do. And there's documentaries that sort of introduce you to a new world. Like there's you might watch a documentary about surfing or skateboarding, or watch a documentary about a sushi chef, and I'm like, sushi is freaking fascinating. Who knew? This guy's
Right.
amazing. And I just wanted to help. I thought it would be cool if there was a film that could give people that experience about FPV, people who are not in FPV, and could go, who are these interesting people, and what is this interesting activity? And also for the people who are in FPV to sort of, I guess legitimize is not that we need legitimizing because it's legitimate as it is, but to say, sit down and be able to have something you can show your parents and you can watch it and you'll be like, oh my God, this is the real deal. So
Very cool. So the documentary's been completed. However, it's not out publicly yet. I
correct.
guess what's the deal with that, and what's the next steps for that happening?
Yeah, the edit is done. It is currently we're trying to sell it basically because James Christensen. I was an executive producer, which means I helped pay for it, and James Christensen was everything else basically. He shot the interviews. He edited all the editing, and so we would like to get it out there with like a streaming service. Both because people have said, well, why don't you just self-distribute it? Just put it up somewhere. And the problem is that if we put it up somewhere like just a website, everybody in FPV will go watch it, and then that'll be the end of it. And the
Mhm.
goal is that it's like I want it to be like on a Netflix or an Amazon Prime or an HBO or I don't care, Disney, I don't care, so that as people are scrolling, they can find it and they were like, oh, what is this? So currently we are trying to get it picked up through various means.
That sounds great. I look forward to seeing it. I haven't seen it personally, but from what I've heard, it's very good. And I think you're right on with using the medium of a documentary. I think could reach a lot of people who may get sparked with the interest of FPV. In addition
Yeah,
to
I
all of
hope
us who
so.
are in it, just enjoying watching it, getting to see people we may recognize, and kind of just seeing it at a documentary level. I think that's really neat to kind of legitimize our hobby into something that can be documented like that.
Yeah. We did a private showing for about 80 people, I think was what ended up coming at a theater. And it was really amazing to see it up. I'd seen the edit like on my laptop, but it was amazing to see it on the big screen in a room with a bunch of people. And everybody who saw it said they were super, super psyched. So
Nice. I think I have one more.
I have no idea who did this. I have no idea who did this.
It was in the search. I was like, I got to include this one. It made me laugh and probably makes others laugh too. The
I've
best part
seen,
is
yeah.
that it's animated, and that's pretty fun.
Uh-huh. That's a emoji on my Discord server too, or a GIF
Is
or
it?
something. Oh yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining
It's crazy.
somebody holding a JB doll and brushing its hair. It may be a real thing. Who knows?
I don't really, yeah. I mean, more power to you. Enjoy if that's what you're into.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us tonight on the live stream here for Legends of FPV. I am here with Joshua Bardwell, and as a thank you, we wanted to offer a discount code right now for GetFPV that you can add to your cart. The code is Bardwell, just the last name there, Bardwell. You apply that to your cart, you're going to save 7% off your whole order. You can see like this, get a couple Bardwell RTFs, maybe a DIY kit, and look at that, you save $49 right off the bat. So that's
Nice.
live right now. That's good for 1 week. So go ahead and shop if you want. Thank you, Joshua, for joining us tonight and making this possible. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here. I mean, with guys like Steele and Schizo, I mean, that's good company.
Yeah, we've had a few good guests so far. I think you definitely are not below them, but up there with Legends of FPV. I've had a lot of people asking, when's JB going to be on there? So I'm glad that you were able to make it. I'm looking at the comments here. I want to start maybe interacting with the crowd a little bit, getting some questions answered, maybe some comments. Do you see anything that sticks out to you there, JB? I'll try to look through a few too.
Oh, let's see. Joseph Dahari notices I had a button-down shirt. Is it really me? Yeah, I do have button-down shirts. I thought for the film, I should look nice.
I've seen you in other stuff too, like a sari or what is that what you call them?
A sarong.
A sarong.
Yeah. I've switched from sarongs to Turkish towels though.
Turkish. What's the difference?
It's a heavier fabric. It's a little nicer to wear.
I see Michael says he wanted to say how important Joshua was for all of us getting started so many years ago. So thank you, Michael. Nice for the shout out. A couple people asking if Sharp was going to be on here. That would be nice. I have reached out to him. He's a hard guy to get a hold of these days.
We tried to get him for the film because obviously, when you talk about the history of FPV, how could you not? Right? When we mentioned him in the film, but we couldn't get him for the interview. He's impossible to get, really.
Yeah, he's a guy of many passions, and right now he's killing it in his animation and also some of his own films he's even done. So follow him if you want to see some of those projects he's been working on. Unfortunately for us in FPV, we don't get to see him flying anymore, but he's doing really cool stuff.
Yeah, there's an argument to be made that he went out on top, right?
Yeah, he timed it just right, probably.
I mean, he went out on... Listen, if you stay in the hobby long enough, eventually someone will decide you're a jerk and hate you, right? He got out. Everyone loves him.
That's true. I have not really ever heard anybody say, I don't like Sharpoo, right?
That's right. That's because he left.
Maybe we should both leave.
It's too late.
Yeah. I have another quick game we can play together here, Joshua.
Okay.
I have some products from the past that I wanted to show you. A few of them are pretty simple. A few of them may be a little more obscure. I wanted to see if you recognized them, if we could say what they were for.
Okay.
So let me turn on my overhead camera. And audience, welcome to play along too if we get stumped here. So let me bring this down. First one, we'll start off real easy.
Well, that's a JB motor, right?
Yeah.
That's my motor.
Let me change it over to the free screen here.
Oh, damn.
Okay, so this is actually one of the original prototypes. The reason I can tell is the laser etching is messed up.
Yes.
So people probably don't realize, but for whatever reason, this purple ring is very hard to laser etch. So the color and the coating does make a difference for how these etch away the color, the plating. And I can tell you, Tim Nilsson, he was over in China trying to dial in that machine for like days.
I know. And he said, I asked for purple. I said, could the ring be purple? Golden purple. And he said, I've got this great color purple. You're going to love it. It's just, I'm having a lot of trouble, etching it. And I was like, Tim, it's cool. It doesn't have to. He was like, no, I'm going to do it.
Right.
And he did.
You
I
should have seen
figured
the
it.
pile of rings that we had at the factory because you can only really do it once. We use one ring and then we kind of, just destroy it by lasering it 20 times. But it took a long time to get those settings dialed in to just be right. But you can see even in here, like part of it was
Yeah,
right, then it would start fading. But that was a really cool and unique motor.
yeah,
And I remember, you were very specific with the size motor that you were interested in. Can you
yeah.
maybe give us a little bit of a background on why that was?
Yeah, well, I mean, the truth of the story is that I only do licensed products when I feel like I have something to contribute, or if there is something that no one's making that I want someone to make for me, and then I'm like, okay, I'll put my name on it if you make it for me, and that was pretty much what this situation was. I was flying some motors from a company called EFAW, EFAW, and they had these 2407 motors when nobody was making motors that big for 5 inch. And the
Right.
size wasn't the only thing that made them unique, but they were very, very unique and very good motors. And I liked them a lot. I thought they were pretty special. And I thought, I tried to reach out to them and say, hey, you guys, you got a good motor here. And they like the owner of a company just dropped off the face of the earth. No, I don't even know the story of what happened, but the company just disappeared.
Yep.
I thought, well, crap, no one's making 2407 motors. And I thought, well, who could do that? And you guys were one of the first companies I thought of because you have a lot of pilot sponsored motors. And so you clearly have the ability to sort of work with a pilot, figure out what they want, and sort of go through that process of designing a motor that meets their needs. And then this motor was the result.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It was a fun project to work with you on it. This is actually the 2208 variant, one of the early prototypes as well as that, and this
Hmm.
had the Popo Pro shaft on that one.
Yep.
For those who wonder about that. All right, so that was the JB motor. I also had one just of a stator just to get that on camera. And so this is kind of what the inside looked like if anybody ever
Hmm.
wondered the
Yep.
inside of that JB motor. All right, let's move down the line to something a little bit more obscure. This one may date me if you recognize it. This might be hard to get on
Hold on,
camera.
it's not in focus.
Yeah,
Oh, we got to zoom out a little.
how's that?
You have to. That's not. Can't really see it. It's not ringing a bell. I'll tell you that. No.
So it's
I mean,
plastic. It's got a couple holes in it.
is it a camera holder of some
Yeah,
kind?
you're on the right track.
Is it for a 3D camera, like a binocular camera?
Yeah, so this was actually a case for what was called the Nerd Cam. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
remember that name.
I do. I do.
So it was Nerd Cam 3D. So yeah, it was a stereoscopic FPV camera. And this was like
Mm-hmm.
2014 maybe. It was a
Mm.
long time ago. We still apparently had a few of these cases on the shelf because the camera is literally just like a PCB board with the lenses on it. Like it was you
Yeah.
wouldn't want to crash it. So this was the idea to protect it. Even then, it was not super durable.
So
But
so so many of that stuff was just like Arduino electronics hobbyist stuff that then we shoehorned onto a quadcopter and tried to keep it alive. You know.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know if anybody in the audience has flown it, but flying, I did get to fly it when it came out, and flying like in three-dimensional FPV, it was a quite an experience. If you're flying on an open field and you didn't have, much close to you, you didn't notice much difference. But like I flew that indoors and having a little bit of depth perception, it felt way different.
Yeah.
Like so different that you had to get used to it. But I always wish that was more of a doable thing for us. We're limited kind of by the size of our quadcopters and what we want to put on there because you can't really shrink down the stereoscopic distance, right? You can't put it right next to
Right.
each other because then it's not eye width apart.
Yep.
So then you're always struggling how to fit it onto something. But I thought that was kind of a neat one. All right, we're going to go to another one here I got. How about this one? Do you recognize what this could be?
So is that a is that a PWM switch? No.
No,
Oh, that's not ringing a bell.
this is a connector here. I don't know if you recognize what that
Yeah.
would go to.
That
Try to get up a little closer.
no. I would guess that goes to a camera. Does that
Yeah,
plug go into a camera? It looks like it might.
yeah, you're on the right lines there. So this was a live video out from a GoPro Hero camera. And I'm talking like Hero 2 or
Right.
3 maybe.
And you could fly with it if you didn't mind 200 milliseconds of latency.
You could. So, and we did. But
Yeah.
the idea was you had an ability to get live video out of your GoPro through that like 60 pin connector. So Tim, one of his trips to China, he found like this original OEM source that GoPro was using. So he found that connector. We put it onto a PCB and then basically made that possible.
Nice.
And that was that's an old one, but I thought that was kind of a funny story to bring up. All right, how about these? These are pretty basic, but bonus points if you can say what they were designed for, or like which specific board.
Oh, I mean, those are clearly pin headers.
Yep.
Let's see. Now that's only 2, isn't it? There's only 2, so it's not for servos, or there'd be 3.
Two what? Oh, 2 rows. You're saying?
2 rows.
Oh no, one has a 3 row. It's hard to see on this. Sorry, my camera's
for motor outputs. I couldn't say what flight controller it's from, but yeah, it's pin headers for a flight controller.
So this was a pin header set for the Naze 32. So back in the day when you didn't solder to your flight controller, you just connected pin headers everywhere.
And everybody was direct soldering, and you're like, well, how would I mean, I don't want to resolder everything when I replug it. That's silly.
Right.
These plugs are so much better.
This is a little bit of a self plug here, but maybe you'll recognize this one.
It's kind of, well, that's a QAVS. Is that a Bardwell QAVS?
It is.
I mean, it ought to be, right?
Yeah, it ought to be. You're right.
Is that the bind and fly of my QAVS that you guys made?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is using the JB frame.
Yeah. It's a great frame. It's such a good looking frame too. And people like, I know that like, oh, performance is all that matters, but it is. I really like the way it looks. Ryan did a great job designing it.
Agreed. Yeah, he's an awesome designer, and glad we could work on that project.
Yeah. It really shows. I mean, anybody can just do a pencil sketch on a napkin or in CAD and make like, okay, here's a quadcopter frame. But there are all these little sort of refinements and aesthetic touches in addition to, it's almost that it's so simple, it's hard to distinguish and make it look nice while not compromising it. And a good frame designer knows how to pull that off. So it's pretty impressive.
So this is something new I prepared. Excuse my poor artwork. But what these are supposed to represent are radiation patterns of antennas. I wanted to do a little game with you to match the antenna with the radiation pattern.
Oh, all right.
So I have a few different antennas here that we can put on the board.
Are we looking side on or are we looking top down? Looks like it must be side on.
This would be side, yeah.
Yeah.
Would be the idea. So I have an axis antenna. I have a double axis antenna. And I have an axis HD antenna, patch style.
Okay.
So can you tell me which one goes where?
Well, the patch antenna is clearly the middle one because it's directional.
Okay. So we'll put this one here.
And I suspect that the dual axis goes on bottom because it's like got a larger coverage pattern. And then the regular axis is going to be like the Omni one on top. I bet that's what I'm going to go with.
Survey says yes, you're right.
Okay.
Congrats. Yeah.
Yeah, that double.
If you know radiation patterns, but yeah, the double one's actually a very interesting one of how that works, and I'm sure Hugo could tell it much more eloquently than I could.
Yeah.
Who helped design this, but interesting use cases for all of these antennas. I find it very interesting, and I remember when I got into FPV, antenna theory and radiation patterns and all that was like, Morse code to me, where I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. You just don't unless you learn it.
Yeah.
But it's an important one to learn because it can really help you choose the best antenna in your situation. I get asked, we get asked by customers often, like, what's the best antenna? And it's a hard one because it really depends.
No.
You could say this one maybe will do most of the things for you the best, but there's not really a best antenna for every situation, because it is very specific to where you want to fly, how you want to fly, what's your aircraft doing, what's the transmitter power, what kind of RF environment are you in. There's so many factors that can interfere or determine that choice. But
Yeah.
like the circular polarized axis has this kind of, apple circular shape, so you're going to have good signal behind you, in front of you, on top and bottom to some degree as well. Where the Axie HD is going to give you longer range, but only in a certain direction in front of you. You're not going to have good signal above, below, and then behind you, you don't have much either. And then the double axis is an interesting one that kind of gives the best of both worlds, where it improves the gain, but still is an omnidirectional signal. So you end up getting a little bit of a squished. You don't have as much range above and below, but you improve your range out in front and behind you, which for my flying, I think a lot of people, that's actually a nice in between. So on your receiver, this does really well.
The only problem is if you drop your head, right? That's the downside of the high gain antennas. If you keep your head up, then usually, but as soon as you drop your head, now all that signal energy is going into the ground and you're in the null. So, but you keep your head up, it'll be fine.
Yeah, you definitely got to be aware where your head is. I see a lot of people, they're not even aware that their head's pointing straight down at the ground, right? They think they're looking forward, and all of a sudden they're like twisting, looking down, and they're like, why is my signal bad? You're like, you're looking at your feet.
If you video people who are flying, they're just all over the place with their heads.
That's probably some good advice for people maybe even getting started or flying with friends that haven't been aware of where they're looking while they fly or tend to look. But maybe have someone videotape you, and you can maybe learn something to understand, oh, when I fly, I tend to look down. I should have my antennas pointing up further than I would expect if you have an antenna that you can adjust on your goggles or something like that.
Yes. You got like the Orca goggles have the head tilt alarm, where if you drop your head, they'll beep at you. I think they're the only ones that do that.
That's a neat feature.
Cool. Yeah.
You're right. You're right. Well, we have a lot of people in the chat right now. It's hitting up. It's blowing up. That's really cool. Phantom FPV, I see you out there. Thanks for joining us. Owen, Steve-O, Johnny D. Awesome. So Joshua, what's in store for you in the near future, and do you have anything long term that you want to share with anybody, or what's the future look for you?
Yeah, I mean, I just keep making videos, try to stay relevant, keep helping people. I've got some ideas for videos that I want to make. I've been thinking about doing an interview series because a lot of people are getting into commercial flying now, doing movies, commercials, guys like Aaron Ciotti, Tommy Tabahia, Paul Nurkala, a lot of other guys. I wonder about... I think it'd be pretty cool to do a series where you interview them and share that side of the hobby. Keep flying, keep trying to be a better pilot, and after flow state is sort of in the books, then who knows what other sort of big project I might work on. But for now, that's the one I'm focusing on. Trying to, of course, it's all behind the scenes, so it's a little bit tough because, we have a guy who's repping the film, going to try and get it purchased, but it's all like, well, how did it go this week? Nope, nothing's happened yet. So,
and you're based in Tennessee, is that right?
Knoxville.
It seems like
where, by the way,
pilots right around your area.
Yes, thank you. You were about to say, because Evan Turner is from Knoxville, and Alex Campbell, Chief, who, by the way, is a Lumineer pilot, I believe.
Yep.
Also is he from Knoxville? He's near Knoxville.
Close.
He's in Tennessee for sure.
Yeah.
And both of them on DRL.
And they're both on podiums I saw the other night. Yeah.
How is it? Like, I moved out of Atlanta, and when I got into FPV, I didn't know there wasn't really an FPV community in Knoxville. I don't think it hadn't going. And I thought, damn, I moved out of Atlanta. Then I got into FPV. Atlanta is this hub of FPV. Regret. It turns out like two of the fastest guys in the world are from Knoxville. So who knew?
Yeah, those guys are incredible race pilots. I have no chance to ever get to that level of racing reaction time and accuracy. I don't know how they do it. Because if you try to watch it as a spectator, they are like making moves 3 gates ahead of where they're at, right?
Yep.
They're lining up stuff that seems to be off screen. I don't know
Yep.
how they do
No,
it.
I watch Evan fly. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to get to watch him fly live sometimes, and even in the spectator goggles, I can't process what's happening until it's already. I'm behind him. Like you could watch somebody and you'd be like, okay, I see what they're doing, and you're kind of
Right.
mentally keeping up with what's going on. I can't even keep up when I'm spectating. Never mind, I fly that fast. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
I agree. Did you ever try to do racing, like seriously, or have you ever been in races, or what's that been like for you?
Well, when we first, so sometime around 2016, 2017, maybe, I hooked up with these two guys in Knoxville who were FPV pilots, and we started the Knoxville FPV racing chapter. Or I don't know if he had already started it maybe when I joined, but we were, I think, the first three sort of members. And it's grown since then. We're a multi GP chapter. You know, we there's a lot of other people there now, but at the time we were racing each other basically through the park, and thinking, boy, oh wow, this is the best. I think this was before, like, people, like right now the level of skill in FPV racing is so high, and I feel like it's shot up. I'm not saying that we would have been competitive, but
Hmm.
we were better then relative to the field than we would be today. That's for sure.
What do you find to be the most challenging trying to like be a FPV racing pilot?
Um, here's the thing with racing. When you do freestyle, it's all about style, and you can choose to do or go anywhere you want. And if you make a mistake, if you don't end up, sometimes you just fling yourself into the air and you look down and you're like, okay, I guess I'm going to hit that gap. But you don't necessarily need a plan. That's sort of the fun of freestyle. As
Hmm.
long as you do something awesome, people will be happy. You'll be happy. You'll look good. When you're racing, you have to go through the gates in a specific order, and that demands a level of consistency. And I mean, that's why racing in any sport, in any, in motorsport, you name it, racing makes good drivers. Racing makes good pilots because it force and you've got the clock, right? There's a race course, there's a clock, and either your times and your laps get faster or they don't, and you have to figure out how to do that. And that's a big challenge because I hit this wall where if I try to go faster, I just crash.
Hmm.
And so I don't, and I mean, the answer to that is probably stick time. The answer is you need to, because these guys like Evan Turner, like Alex Campbell, etc. I mean, they have how many hours of stick time, how much practice, and how many packs do they put in? A huge number, way more than me. I'm not
Right.
saying I would get to their level if I practiced, but I would probably break through that wall.
One other thing I've noticed too related to racing is, kind of the management of your own nerves in a big situation. Because a lot of times with racing, if you're wanting to be really competitive, right? Eventually you're going to get to an event where there's some nerves on the line where something's big happening and you have to show up and you have to perform, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
And there's some people who do okay with that and some people who struggle with that. And they might be the best pilot in their local chapter and doing awesome. They get to a big event and they just don't perform well.
Hmm.
And they have the skill to do it, but it's really like any probably professional sport or other things that take that. Once you get in the spotlight or you get a little bit of people around you, it's different.
Yeah.
And with freestyle, a lot of times you probably don't have that same challenge, right? You're either by yourself with a group of friends, or it's not
Yeah.
usually a very high stress environment.
Yeah, I think the most stress that I feel when I'm freestyling, and this is a good exercise too, if you're out with a group of people, and they really push you. A lot of times when you fly by yourself, at least speaking for myself, you do what's comfortable. Maybe you push yourself a little bit, but at the end of the day, you kind of want to come home with your quads, and so you kind of lay back. That's not true for everybody. If you look at pilots like Corey Cricket, right?
Hmm.
He has only one speed, and it's 10 out of 10, and he just smashes all his quads,
Going
and that's
backwards blind.
right, and that's why he's so good. But for me, at least, when I get out there with other people and I see them pulling moves, and I'm like, oh, I could do that. That really pushes me. But you're right though that the stress isn't the same Because at the end of the day, I mean, most of the time you're just flying for yourself and your own, maybe somebody's spectating you. And if you fail, they'll be like, ah, okay, pat on the back, whatever. You know, you don't go home with the achievement, but when you lose a race, everybody knows you lost, right? You can't just slink back home and find a good edit, find a good flight from the GoPro and put that up on the internet. Like, oh, I had a great day today. Nope.
Yeah, you'll edit your 4 best laps and put them into one
Right.
race. Like, look at that.
Right.
Yeah,
Nope.
yeah, absolutely. Have you ever done anything with long range FPV? And would you say that's? I'm just thinking about the nerves thing. I see some parallels there, at least with the anxiety. Once you get to a certain range, especially if you're doing it for the first time, that can be stressful.
Yeah.
It makes me think of one story. I was out in Las Vegas years ago, and we went out to some of the Red Rock area, I think, and flew up some mountains. And this was early days with before like Crossfire even. Well, maybe it did,
Mm.
but I was on FR Sky 2.4, and I just sent it up a mountain like 4,000 feet.
Mm.
And I remember getting to the top and just feel like, am I going to make it back down? And I did, but that was your heart's bumping, you know, and you come down
Yeah.
with that adrenaline rush, and it was something else. Have you had some experiences with anything long range?
I have had that experience where you're like, oh crap, I'm really out there. I hope I don't lose video. I remember at one of the early quad camps, somebody asked, like, what's long range? And Stingy said, basically, when you're afraid that if you crash, you won't get it back, that's long range. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. They're definitely, I mean, you're not doing, with long range, it's like there's nothing to crash into. You're just up in the sky. So, like, shouldn't it be super relaxing? But knowing that if the plane goes down, then it's gone. It's not relaxing. It's interesting because people say, like, well, if you have a YouTube channel, or if you're a professional, you know, you're somebody like an Alex Vanover who shows up with 20 quads, right? Why would you be? And you even have guys like top racers who don't build their own quads. They have a fleet manager, and so basically all they have to do is show up and fly. And I still think those nerves are there because at the end of the day, you just don't want to lose it. Whether it's because it's a great flying quad and you like it's your best flying quad and you don't want to crash it and make it fly like crap, or because you put hours into building it and you want to fly and you don't want to be sitting at the bench. There's always those nerves there. But at least when you crash and break your freestyle quad, you probably can go pick it up. You know, I haven't done really any serious long range though. No.
Back on when I got married, this was back in the early days of multi-rotors, but I took a QAV 400 with me on my honeymoon to Costa Rica. I literally packed like one of those suitcase size hard cases just for my drone.
Yeah, yeah.
The guy's like,
Your wife,
I'm gonna fly it there. Yeah, yeah. My
she
wife
knew it.
was.
She probably knew what she was in for.
She was supportive. I'm lucky to have her. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I flew that like over jungle area where I knew if it went down, it's gone. Like I wasn't gonna find it. I flew to the top of like a volcano or near a volcano and stuff like that up there. It was a really exciting experience, but for sure you get up in the air and it's a different feeling when you go, well, I'm past the point of no return. If something fails or if I do something wrong, it's gone.
The flip side of that though is that people ask, well, how do you improve at FPV? And the truth is that if you had an unlimited budget and you had a fleet manager to build your quads for you, and all you had to do was plug in and go fly. Like, think about the simulator. How much do you improve in the simulator because you don't have to think at all about crashing? And so if there's somebody out there and they're, like a 15-year-old kid who worked all summer to build their first quad and they can't afford to crash it, they're going to struggle to get better because they're not going to be able to push themselves as hard. That's an unfortunate truth. And so what I take from that is that you have to, if you want to improve, you have to be willing to take those risks. Yeah. Because if you always bring all your quads home from the flight session, then you're not improving. You're not getting and you're probably not having as much fun as you could be having. But if you can't afford to replace them, then you better bring them home. So there's just a balance there.
For sure. Yeah, if it's your only quad and you can't replace it, maybe fly a little conservative until you feel like that's worth it. Jay Sharp asked Bardwell, what's the biggest change you've seen in the industry since you started reviewing content? Does anything stick out to you?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the industry has gotten bigger, obviously, and that means that there's more money in it. And for all the reasons that people would say that that's a bad thing, one effect is that we have a lot more companies making products for us. Like the very first multi-rotors, people were pulling the IMU chip out of a Wii nunchuck. It wasn't, and the flight controllers were Arduino micro processors and board. So like you were just doing it all yourself and cobbling it together, and it was very, very difficult. And the results were, freaking backup cameras as FPV cameras, right? So the ability to have people making FPV gear specifically means that you get better, more reliable gear, and that's a big step forward. The and that has resulted in a really cool expansion of FPV into new areas, not just hobby areas, but things like motion pictures, commercials, and other types of content creation, which has been really exciting to see.
Yeah, agreed. Blue Cheese asked if you have ever gotten to the point where you felt like you lost kind of the joy of flying, or did you ever get in a slump where you just feel like I don't want to fly anymore? Does that happen to you?
No. What happens to me is that I go 2 weeks without flying because every day I wake up and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do today? And I answer my emails and then I'm like, okay, I got to get a video made. And then I look up and it's been 2 weeks and I haven't flown. And I'm like, wait a minute. And then I force myself to go fly some packs and I'm like, oh my God, this is fun. This is why, I just feel better immediately about everything. So I haven't hit a slump. I definitely go the other way where I don't fly enough and I miss it. I have gotten into a slump where I'm like, oh, I don't know what content I'm going to make today. That's where I get a slump, but not flying.
Okay. I know you did that one challenge to yourself at one point where you're doing like 3 packs a day for what was it, a month straight or something?
Yeah. Well, 30 days. It wasn't 30 days in a row, so it
Okay.
wasn't a month. It
Did you
was,
see real improvement because of that? How did that
yeah.
go for you? Okay.
Yeah, 100%. Big improvement. I mean, the theory behind that project was that a little bit of practice every day is better than a lot, like less often. That if you can do it consistently, you can improve. So I did 3 packs a day. I do think I got better, for sure. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
encourage anybody to give it a try. If you feel like you're kind of stuck in a rut. The other thing I did with that was each day I didn't just go out and fly 3 packs. I like picked something that I was going to work on today, and I did that for 3 packs. Like I would say, okay, I saw this pilot do this cool move that I want to try to do. So yeah, I would encourage anybody to do that.
One other thing that stuck out to me when I think it was when I was talking to Jonathan Davis Schizo, he was giving advice that if, a lot of times you get into a rut of flying the same spot, the same thing, especially in freestyle, even like you go to the same field, you do the same thing over and over and over, right? And that can eventually get boring. One piece of advice he had was simply it can be the same place. Just move your chair to the other corner of the field or whatever it would be. And it actually changes a lot of things just by your takeoff point where you're flying. It almost feels like a new spot. And I thought that was an interesting take because I've noticed that myself where you're kind of a creature of habit. And you're like, this is my spot. And I always put it under this tree. And then you end up doing the same thing every time you go there. So I thought that was a good piece of advice.
I've been amazed when people come to visit me at my house and they'll fly and like on their second pack, they're hitting lines and gaps that I'm like, why did I never see that? Right. And I'm like, that's a really cool line. How come I never saw that in all the time I've flown here? So that's absolutely true. It's one of the real benefits of flying with other people is they'll sort of open your eyes to things. I think there's a lot of musical analogies that if you're a musician and the only thing you do is you practice at home, then you're missing out. And that as soon as you start interfacing and playing with other musicians, now you sort of broaden your palette. I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah,
flying with other watch. Is that true? You can watch other people, but unless they're flying the same spot you're flying, they may give you moves. You may be like, oh, that's a cool move. I'm going to try that. But I love flying a spot with other people. And I'm like, oh, that's a cool line. Why did I? Steel is the best at that.
Mm.
He'll come and the very first pack, he'll hit 7 gaps and that I didn't even see. And
Right.
then I try to do, and I can usually get them not as easily as he does, but I'm like, that's cool. What he's doing oftentimes is not unachievable, but his ability to visualize and conceptualize, and then to do like 10 of them in a row, whereas you
Hmm.
might hit one in 5 packs. That's where he really excels.
And your house, I know, is an option, I think, in one of the simulators, right? You've actually had your property digitized into an FPV simulator. Is that right?
Yeah, liftoff. Liftoff put my house in.
What was that like? Is that weird to fly your property in a simulator?
The first time I flew it, I was like, oh, they got it. I was like, oh, yep, that's pretty much what it feels like. Like they did such a good job. A lot of people fly it and they say it feels small,
Hmm.
but that's just the size that it is. You know, that's just what it is.
How did that work on that project? Did you give them photos? They just used satellite images, or what?
Yeah, I gave them a lot of reference photos. They got some of the topology information from a public database. There's topo databases of the world, but a lot of it was manual. For example, they had one artist who worked on the house, and they just had to manually build the house from reference photos. And it like I don't know 2 weeks of work with just making the house. So it had a lot of manual work.
I bet. Well, if you ever sell the house, you could put it up and say, "Look, you can simulate the property and
Yeah,
fly around it." That'd be pretty
I mean
cool.
I can't move now, right?
That's
After
true.
they did all that work, I can't move. I have to just stay here.
Or maybe you can sell it at a premium, and anyone watching here, you could own JB's
Oh, there
flying
you
spot.
go. That's I hadn't thought of that. That's good.
So you're in Tennessee. Have you gotten to travel much related to FPV? And do any trips stick out to you? Like, have you flown outside of the U.S.?
Yeah. I got to go visit. I One of the coolest trips I've done in my life was Fat Shark brought me out to Shenzhen to their office to do an interview with Greg and see their operation. And that was I had never been to China before or Hong Kong. And that was really just an amazing experience for sure.
Yeah, very very different world. Did you get to fly while you're over there?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. They took us out and we flew. Yeah, Tommy crashed on top of a construction site, and we had to go. We were like, okay, what do we do now? And Greg was like, I'll take care of it. Come with me. And then they went
Nice.
and they came back with a quad. I don't really know what happened after that.
Okay. How about in the U.S.? Do any spots outside of your own property?
Yeah, probably one of the coolest trips I got to do was to go visit Free Fly Systems in Seattle. Daniel
Mm,
Riley, who is RC Test Flight on YouTube, he does all these autonomous
mhm.
RC vehicles, really cool stuff. And getting to see the stuff that Free Fly does with their cinema drones was just amazing. Just to see all the ways that RC is being incorporated into motion pictures and so forth. And just getting to fly some of the cool sites they brought us to. That really stands out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks for everyone who joined us here on the live stream and joined us in the chat. If you have any questions for Joshua while we're here, please write them and we'll try to get to them as best we can. A reminder too, we do have a live code going on right now at GetFPV for you all. It's Bardwell. So if you use the coupon code in the shopping cart Bardwell, that saves you 7% on your whole order at GetFPV right now. So that code's good tonight and through next week. So about 1 week, this code will be live and active. Thank you again, Joshua, for joining us here and allowing us to do that with you.
Yeah, for sure.
Double A
There's a.
asked, did you hang out with Skadoosh while you're over in China?
I don't think I got to meet Skadoosh while I was over there.
Okay.
If I did, I don't remember it, and I think I would remember if I'd met him. He seems
He
like a
is
memorable guy.
memorable. Yeah. He
Yeah.
is.
Nickel Sticks asks, if it's working, don't fix it. Is that true? Yes. So here's the thing, Nickel Sticks. If you have a quad that is working and flying well, don't change anything about it. You're gonna
But
crash it and you're
what if a
gonna
new
break it.
firmware comes out and you really want to just update it to the latest
Maybe.
and greatest?
A firmware you could always just roll back. But people are like, well, should I upgrade my motors? No. Buy a new set of motors, build a whole new quad.
Yeah.
Don't take a good quad out of commission to try to make it better. If it's good,
I think that's
you
good.
know,
That's good advice. I have
build
seen
a new
that
one.
all the time. Like it was flying great, and I decided to change XYZ, and now something's wrong.
Yeah. Because the thing is, you're gonna crash it, you're gonna destroy it, or you're gonna break it, and then you'll need to fix it.
Yeah.
So your window of time where you have a quad that's flying good is only so big. Don't close that window unnecessarily because like, oh, I got a new motor out or a new flight controller or whatever. Wait till it breaks and then fix it.
It's interesting to see the different kind of, I guess, I don't know, personalities or people in the hobby. I think it's in a lot of other areas too. But there's a certain person that's like, I have to have the newest, the latest, the greatest. And I think part of the hobby to them is the building, making it look really pretty, and having whatever is the best at the time. And then there's on the opposite spectrum of the guy that's like flying junk parts, but he's making it work. And
You're talking about Bot Grinder.
Yeah, maybe Bot
Right?
Grinder. Yeah.
That's I assume that's who you're. He's not. I don't think he's here anymore.
I think he'll be a guest here soon. We'll see. But
Nice.
it is interesting to see what people find to be their priority in the hobby. If it's building, if it's tinkering, tuning. Some people spend hours and weeks tuning the quad, getting it perfect. Some other people I know that have tons of fun just putting on the default tune and flying for the next month with it. And that's all
Yeah.
they do. So
Yeah, my goal is to get flight time. I want the experience of flying. I enjoy building, but ultimately I want to fly. And so if I have a working quad, I'm going to keep it, and I may build another quad to try out. But the other thing, and who was it in the comments who pointed this out? I'm not seeing the name. Oh, there we go. Joe Krupe points out every time you switch to something different, you kind of got to relearn it. So if you're doing something different, you're constantly in that mode of adjusting, and maybe you're not getting as good as you could.
True, very true. Joshua, do you have any advice that's related to building? What's been something that's been very helpful for you that maybe you wish you knew earlier on, related to building or assembling?
The number one thing most people could do to have better results with building is to learn how to solder correctly. Most people they want to get a quad built and they learn how to solder just well enough to sort of make it work. But they're having, I mean, some people never learned and, they struggle to get in the air and they're frying things. I firmly believe that most people can learn to solder competently with a couple of hours of practice, but you have to have somebody who actually knows how to do it to show you the right way to do it. Otherwise, you're just practicing the wrong thing and it's not. But once you know what to do, you can learn to do it with a little bit of practice. And I've taught people to solder, and I'm not saying I'm like a world-class solderer, but once they know what to do, they can kind of get it done. So that's what I would say. I was lucky.
I agree with soldering. Yeah.
My dad taught me to solder when I was a kid, such as it is. So I had a head start there, but definitely.
Nice. Yeah, soldering for me too. I remember that learning curve. I think something that finally clicked with me was two things. Use the right kind of solder, because as a beginner, it's not clear sometimes of what good solder or bad solder is, especially if it's like a 60-40 versus like lead free and all that stuff that can be challenging sometimes. And then the second one was that I learned early on, pre-tinning made such a big difference that you maybe don't think of if you're coming brand new. Where you just try to put it together and start throwing solder on and you're like, man, this is really hard. And then if you pre-tin the wire, pre-tin a pad, put them together, you're like, whoa, that worked the way I thought it should have at that point. And that helped me a lot to learn how to pre-tin and then use quality solder. Made a huge difference just with the result of my soldering.
Yeah, and flux, liquid electrical flux makes a big difference in the quality. You can solder without it if you have great technique. If you have poor technique or mediocre technique, it can make a big difference.
Agreed. What about the magic electrical tape? Does that help performance at all?
The red electrical
what you
tape?
do?
No,
Yeah.
that's just laziness. That's pure laziness on my part. And then people complain about it, so I lean into it. That's all.
Nice. Not going to change it now.
There's a question here from Remy Tim that I want to reply to.
Okay.
Remy Tim asks, it's widely known that JB didn't believe we would get digital HD video feeds. So what's the next thing he wants but knows we won't get? And I'm only asking so we can get the thing. Okay. I just want to say, I made a video talking about the technical and economic challenges that were preventing us from getting a digital HD video feed at the time. And I think the title of the video was why digital HD FPV is nearly impossible, parentheses, nearly. And the thumbnail was a reference to the movie Mean Girls, and it said digital HV not going to happen, which is a line from the movie. And a lot of people, when DJI came out, were like, Bardwell's got egg on his face. And I get that. I mean, there's probably, it happened faster than I thought it would. I thought it would take a lot longer. But I never said it was not going to happen. I just laid out all the challenges that would have to be overcome for it to happen. And it turned out that DJI overcame those challenges successfully. And also, I kind of feel like the existence of DJI actually proves me right, because I said that that the FPV market doesn't have enough financial draw to justify the money that it would take, the R&D investment. Expense, yeah. And it turns out that it didn't, because DJI did it in the camera drone market where they made billions and billions of dollars. And then they went, okay, I guess we'll make a FPV system. So I just want to say, I never said it was never going to happen. It just said it was going to be really hard. I guess technically the title kind of might have said that, but
little bit of clickbait, maybe, yeah.
A little bit. I am impressed with how quickly DJI did it. But there were so many companies that tried to do digital FPV, like Connex ProSight, and they kind of sort of did it, but kind of didn't cross the threshold for whatever reason. And then somebody like DJI decides they're going to do it, and they just have billions of dollars, and they just write a check, and then they make it happen. But if they hadn't done that, I think, we have HD0. They're trying. So what's the next thing? Oh, that's tough.
What would be on your wish list that doesn't exist today? Is there something in your mind?
Like a technical...
Doesn't even have to be possible. Let's just say
yeah. Well, it's got to be... Okay, so we got... With DJI and now HD0, it looks like one thing or another, we're going to kind of crack video. We still don't have ultra long range video like we have ultra long range control links, but I think we have pretty good video for what we mostly want to do. Control links, we've basically cracked. We have amazing control links: Express LRS, Immersion RC Ghost, TBS Crossfire, TBS Tracer. You have your pick of control links that more or less will never fail safe during anything that you're reasonably going to do. And then the next thing that we need to crack is batteries. Unfortunately, us and Elon Musk both want better battery technology, and he hasn't figured it out yet. So I feel
probably not going to come from the FPV industry first. I agree with you there, but we can hope that it comes from somewhere and we benefit from it down the road. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we have such a weird and specific requirement because I don't remember the math, but somebody did the calculation of the C rating of the batteries of like a Tesla, and like a Tesla pulls, I don't know how many kilowatts when you floor the accelerator, But it turns out it's got such a humongous battery pack that actually the C rate is it's like 5C or something reasonable.
Right.
Whereas we need batteries that have, 80, 100C or more. And there's almost no other application that needs a
That kind of
very
discharge.
lightweight, high discharge battery. So even if we do get a new technology, it may not actually be appropriate for us.
You're right. Even years ago, I've had a lot of talks with companies doing battery research and technology and some really impressive stuff with like really high densities type materials and materials that are incredibly durable. Like you could cut them and the battery still operates and stuff like that, but all of them short to where you're talking about the discharge rate. None of them could hold up to a multi-rotor flying because they just couldn't discharge enough energy. They're great at just discharging a trickle amount of energy for a long period of time or whatever it would be. But we are unique to where we need like huge amounts of energy in small packs discharge, which makes it very challenging. And right now, lithium polymer seems to be the best at doing that.
It's very good. I mean, it could be better. We'd like it to be better. But I guess that makes this actually pretty comparable to what I was saying about HD video, which is that it's very difficult to do. There are all these technical and economic challenges, and there's no money in FPV to actually drive people to meet our specific needs. So it's not going to happen. Perfect. And to hear from now, Tesla will come out with a cell for us.
We're going to have it. 100C lithium ion.
Yeah. There you go.
Lithium unobtainium, something like that. Yeah.
All
right. That's a good one. Yeah. I think the battery technology, you're right. That's something that it's had some progression over the years, but nothing huge for a while now. LiPo has been around for 15, 20 years in our market now. So.
Yeah. Yep.
Good one. Any other comments we want to talk to here? I'm looking through the chat. Thanks again for everyone joining us. I've had a fun time hanging out with you, Joshua, and all the people here on the live stream. We've had a good amount of people here.
Awesome. People want to know about 5G. 5G, the problem, Aaron FPV says 5G will be huge for drones in the commercial space because latency isn't as much of an issue. Bear in mind, Aaron, there are two flavors of 5G. There's the ultra low latency, ultra high bandwidth, high frequency 5G. And then there's another form of 5G that is lower frequency and has much lower, it's still good bandwidth, but it's not like the super impressive one that you're probably thinking of when you think of 5G. And the problem is that the ultra low latency, high bandwidth 5G has like no penetration, and very low range in the atmosphere. So you're not going to have drones flying 5G with 5 millisecond ping times over the country. Maybe in a city where they have a lot of 5G antennas, you could pull that off. But, 5G won't enable real-time drone control over large parts of the country because there won't be that flavor of it.
Maybe we'll have to wait for 6G.
Right. It's getting better.
Just scrolling through all the comments here, making sure we don't miss anybody.
So glad we don't do NICADs anymore, Jason Beamish. Yeah, you think people are like, man, LiPos, I wish we could get better batteries. It's like everybody who grew up in the world of NICADs thinks LiPos are freaking amazing. It's only kids these days who don't know how good they have it, right?
The only advantage I'd say the NICAD would have is you could drain it to 0 and then charge it up again. You didn't have to be quite as careful.
It's true.
But other than that, yes, I would take a LiPo any day.
Yep.
Maybe that's a good tip too you could give. I know you've done other videos on batteries. What about battery charging? Any tips for somebody maybe newer in the hobby of battery charging and something that would be helpful?
Don't parallel charge unless you learn how to do it safely. I see people and they're like, hey, I can get into drones, so you check out my shopping list. And it's a list of like their first quad, their first goggles, their first controller, and they got a parallel charge board on there. And I'm like, listen. And I say this as someone, and I know GetFPV also has a safe parallel charge board with polyfuses and fuses. You can make parallel charging as safe as it can be. It's still more risky And as a straight out the gate, unless you really understand what's going on in a parallel circuit and how to do it safely, probably best to just set that aside. It can be done, but the risk is higher. It's a great idea to find someplace safe to charge. Charging on a flammable surface inside your house has some risk, especially if it's your first battery and you don't know about lipo charging. Something like a bat safe box, it's expensive, but if it saves you from a fire, it'll be well worth it. Other times I see people, they charge and they'll put it like in their fireplace or in a freaking barbecue grill out on their patio.
Bunker.
And these are all, things you could try to do.
Yep. Definitely battery charging and taking care of the batteries is very important, and it can be very dangerous and even life-threatening if you make a mistake and aren't paying attention. So
yeah,
something that we stressed as well as a retailer of batteries and stuff like that. It's something you got to take seriously. Never leave them unattended, even if you think I'll be back in 5 minutes. Right? Sometimes it takes more than 2 seconds and it's too late. So you want to be around if something does go wrong, even if you're doing everything right. You can still have a failure, right? So like you can be super experienced, you're parallel charging right, you have them all balanced correctly. A battery can still fail, a charger can still fail, and then that can be unexpected, which results in potentially a fire or something like that. So definitely stay around it.
Here's the thing with lipos. When you're charging lipos, if you have lipos in your house, and I don't mean like the lipo in your cell phone, because they've pretty much figured out mostly how to make these essentially safe, right? But I mean like hobby lipos. Then you're already doing something risky, and you have to be training yourself and taking steps to mitigate that risk. And when you mitigate that risk, the chances of something bad happening go down to an acceptably low level, right? But the risk is never zero. There's always a possibility that a random lipo will have a defect that you're not aware of. It seems fine, and it just lights on fire in the middle of the night. I mean, it's possible. It's rare. Yeah. But a lot of what happens is that people get into the hobby and they don't learn how to charge safely, and they're doing risky things without knowing that they're doing it, and then they're increasing the risk to themselves. And when you use parallel boards, that's a multiplier, because if you have one battery that goes up in smoke, now you have one battery's worth of fire. But if you have 10 batteries on a parallel board and one of them goes, now you have 10 batteries worth of fire. So people just need to understand that's what's going on.
Absolutely. One thing I learned in parallel charging that I didn't know before, when you're plugging in your batteries, if you're doing parallel, you plug in your first one, you plug in your second battery. When those batteries are at different voltages, they're going to try to balance. Like the one that's full is going to empty into the one that's below it. Is that right? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
And that actually discharges a lot of energy quickly when it tries to balance the circuit out, right? Like, and on our safe parallel charger that you mentioned, that Paraguard Pro, we have actually amperage per channel. And you plug in two batteries that are even very close, all of a sudden you'll see, boom, 10 amps for like a couple seconds kind of get pushed over until it levels out.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting. I'm like, if you're not paying attention, you put a battery at 4.1 volts and you put a battery at 3.2 volts in the same one together.
Yeah.
There's a lot of energy trying to get pushed over to come down to an even. Like you have two levels of water and they're going to want to come up to here together.
For sure. Interestingly, that actually is not, in my opinion, okay, so take this with a grain of salt. I feel like that is not as dangerous as other aspects of parallel charging. I've done that test in controlled conditions where you have a battery at 3.2, 3.3 volts and a battery at 4.2 volts, and you plug them in and I measure the current between them. And there is a huge surge of current at first, like 50 amps for just a second. And it very quickly tapers off down to something like 6 or 7 amps, which for a 1500 milliamp hour battery, that's a 4, 5, or 6C, which is not great. But if it's a healthy battery, it's not going to immediately just light on fire. It's actually, I've done demonstrations where I try to make a battery light on fire to show people how dangerous it is. And I haven't been, and finally you just stab the damn thing because you just can't get it to light off. I think when parallel, I mean, not that that's good. You still need to be aware of that. That inrush current is risky, but I think the riskier thing is people will take damaged batteries. They've been crashed. They've got a bad cell, and they'll
Mhm.
plug them all in, and they'll start charging. And that damaged cell, then in the charging, that's where you really get yourself into trouble. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And where you maybe aren't paying attention and you've lost a cell completely,
Yep.
and then you think your voltage is balanced, but what you actually have is three cells at full voltage, one dead.
Yep.
And it looks like you have four cells at low voltage, and what you're really doing is charging three out of your four cells that are already fully charged. And it's going to, depending on your charger and maybe settings, you could easily overcharge that battery, and that's, you're pushing it to the breaking point. And that's when failures happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
and there's another failure mode. Everybody thinks about the fires, and they should, but there's another failure mode, which is you've got 6 or 10 batteries on a parallel charge board, and one of them drops a cell, and now it kills that cell on all of the others. And now instead of being out $20, you're out $200. Just you now have 10 batteries with a bad cell 3. So you should only ever parallel charge batteries that you're sure are healthy. If not for your concern about fire, well, I'm charging outside on my concrete patio. It's fine. Then for your wallet.
Good advice. Good advice. I have a question for you for FPV. What would you say is one of the areas that's I don't know, most annoying, or the one that you always wish, like, man, I wish I didn't have to do this step. But like, binding a receiver and trying to get into your quad or whatever it would be. Like, does something stick out to you that's a pain that you wish didn't have to happen?
Retrieving my quad after crashing.
Hmm?
Changing my props. I think that one of the most annoying things is when you're trying to fly, and maybe you're trying to get a trick, or you're trying to you're kind of in a groove, and you crash, and now you have to go get your quad. But okay, so then you got to change your props, and it's like it totally breaks your rhythm, right? You see the racers, and they have those electric drill drivers, so they're just like they get their like. I've been so tempted to carry one of those, but they're so big.
Yeah.
But yeah, that always bugs me. Is having to change props after. I'm always like, can I bend it back and just get back in the freaking air? I want to change props. It annoys me.
Okay, prop changing, yeah, crashing's always annoying. Agreed. I mean, I would say the binding process is better than it used to be. In
For
the early
sure.
days, sometimes that was challenging, especially if you had to rebind and get to go in to find a bind button that was buried in your build somewhere.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of the receivers, I know you can bind without even having to push a button, which makes it a lot easier.
Yep, it's true. It's really cool. The firmware updating procedure is getting a lot easier. If you think about updating firmware on FreeSky receivers, what a pain it has been. FreeSky has made it easier with their access receivers, which have the over-the-air firmware updates. A lot of people still aren't using those, though. Like, I think TBS has to get credit because Crossfire did so many things that solved problems that we had just accepted as being just that's how we do it. And over-the-air firmware updates certainly is one of the biggest ones. Just boop, done. I can't tell you how many times I have showed up to fly, and I forget that I updated the firmware on my Crossfire module, and so I'll set the quad down, and it's not bound because they have mismatched firmware. And if I was running FreeSky, FreeSky ACCST, I would just be done for the day because I'm not going to flash that. But it just says update firmware, boop, and then
Yes,
2 minutes later I'm in the air. That's so great.
Agree with you there. Yeah, they did a lot of things right there. Well, I think we can probably start wrapping it up, Joshua, unless you have anything specific you want to cover before we go.
No.
I've had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And everyone, too, on the chat. We've had a lot of conversation going. It's been fun, and I know I've learned a few things tonight. I hope somebody else has, too.
Awesome.
A little bit about Joshua's past and future, and a few of the things in between. Once again, guys, the code on GetFPV, just to remind you, Bardwell, for the next week. Use it on checkout. You save a little bit of cash. Thanks everyone for joining us. Stay tuned too. We have more episodes of Legends of FPV coming up in the near future, and look forward to sharing all those with you. Thank you so much, Joshua, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Andy.
Legends of FPV. It was a lot of fun, and hope to see you and talk to you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.